I'm so happy to have these two guys with me today. Whenever you're doing a sort of a recorded webinar with two people that you've worked with, one was a peer, the other one was your boss, and you feel like you're among friends, you might have done some good decisions. So, so let me start. This is where I embarrass you guys a little bit with the intros. Eran Yaniv is a serial entrepreneur. After two significant exits, he's working on a third startup called Sidetalk. You could see in his background here, Sidetalk basically turns content marketing on its head by attaching an autonomous SDR to content produced by the marketing department. And this SDR works during the content consumption to uncover the buyer's intent and then basically leaping from the marketing funnel directly to the sales funnel. He's also the chairman of Trend Demon, which is another MarTech company. And Eran is also a magician hobbyist, and Keith and I watched him in action many, many times. And I was also add that he's an avid family traveler, and I could see that from pictures I'm getting from time to time. So this is Eran. Keith Butler, who is with us as well, president and CRO of Observe, which is an observability company from Sutter Hill Ventures. Observe is tackling the problem of companies who are data rich and information poor. It discerns why apps and infrastructure are running the way they are, and enables engineers basically to spend more time coding rather than investigating issues. Keith is also what used to be the CRO of Perfecto, which is what we're going to talk about today, and used to be the head of Americas at RSA Avesca, and held leadership roles in BMC and PTC, which we've heard a lot about during our journey. He's a runner. I tried chasing him. Don't try that. And he's an extreme outdoor person, and there's some nice war stories about that as well. All right, that's it, guys. Great to have you.
Nice chatting with you guys. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, so here's what we're going to do today, which is slightly different than other episodes we had. Eran, Keith, and I basically were at Perfecto, which was Eran's second startup. And what we wanted to do is basically chat about the journey specifically with a focus on the go-to-market, what we've learned, some of the things that we've done during that journey, and then get into some interesting war stories from that era. So I'm going to start with you, Eran, a little bit before Keith and me joined the company. You basically ran Perfecto, just like any other startup, as a founder-led sales startup. So maybe you can start with just explaining what you did there, what you've learned, what are the things that led you to move from that stage to get your first sales leader.
Yeah, so founder-led sales for people who are not salespeople is about being a hero. So it's a special methodology in which you do everything that you can, brute force, to actually get deals done. Their size doesn't have to matter as long as you actually get a deal done with some significant company, and that's what we were doing. Basically, we were calling on large enterprises, mostly on the East Coast. Could be Bank of America, Citi, and the Canadian banks and so on. And we would somehow force our way in. There was no real methodology. We were very nice people. And so we use that in order to get in. You have to understand, I'm not exaggerating. That is what happened, right? And when we needed to do to take some aggressive measures in order to take a deal, like reduce the price to something that may not make a lot of sense moving forward, then we did that. And that's the way we got some of the biggest names around, like Discover Financials and Bank of America. Exactly that way. We call it the hero methodology, because when you close the deal, you're a hero. Very quickly, you understand two things: that you don't really know what you're doing, and that it's not, and whatever it is, it's not really scalable. You can't really do anything with it. The first thing that we kind of looked at was I was not a sales guy. I simply was not a sales guy. I'm a product guy. I can go in, I can talk about the product, maybe articulate value really nicely, but beyond that, I was hoping things would roll in the right direction. And the first thing we thought about is let's bring in somebody who is a sales professional. And that's our first VP of sales, I would say, right? And this guy came from ArcSight, from HP, and he was a professional sales guy. And the best story I have here is when he joined, I was running a process with Liberty Mutual that was kind of down the street in New Hampshire. And I thought I was about to close a deal for $50,000 a year. And his name was Mark, and Mark said, you know what, let's do this. He didn't really know much about the product yet, but he said, let's do this. We go together. You'll be the sales engineer, and I'll do the talking. And we went in, and I did a presentation as the sales engineer. We didn't lie about it, right? But that was the role that I took in that meeting. And we stepped out, I kid you not, with $350,000 a year for 2 years. And what I saw there was that there are situations where, professionals know how to talk to the right people with the right numbers, assess the value or the size of the problem that they have very quickly, and kind of frame it in the right direction.
And Eran, when you looked for Mark, what were you looking for? What was your profile?
So it's a good question, and it's different. It's different than the time that I was looking for someone to replace Mark later on. Here, I really wanted somebody who has a good track record. That was my main my main criteria, and of course somebody that would vouch for him, but not much, really and truly, not much more beyond that. Okay, and I think Mark, he had that, right? I think you knew him from HP,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, Mark had a good track record, like a really good track record, and he did really well in various places. And you and the other people that I knew out of HP, could vouch for him, and Mercury, right? And so it made sense, right? And that was Mark's contribution. He came in, he was a professional sales guy, and really took us from $2 million, which we did with the hero methodology, to about $12 million with no methodology. That was the problem, right? And then I can say that with Mark, it looked like we're rolling, but at the end of the day, at some point, I saw somebody who was a lot of maintenance, required a lot of maintenance, and was not scalable. Like he would not be able. We kind of captured all those accounts that were probably reasonable to capture, with good reasonable prices, let's say, but not much more than that. And so we decided that Mark should to part ways, and
Interesting. So I'm interested also from a CRO perspective, Keith, when you meet companies that are going from that founder-led sales to a first VP sales or CRO, what are they looking for usually?
Yeah. What are they looking for? Well, they're looking for someone to do this thing that to them feels like magic. I think that's, if I really do it, they kind of get themselves in that place, as Eran, I think, really well described there, as they realize that this thing's getting too much for them, and it's getting out of control a little bit. And so I think that's really what they're looking for. They're often not looking to kind of, give away control of the go-to-market, which is, I think, where you kind of get into the contention, because to do some of the things that we did early at Perfecto, and I think to build a great sales organization, there's some kind of maybe counterintuitive things that have to happen, and it's and one of those things is to give away a little bit of control. And that's one of the things I I immediately gravitated to Eran about when I met him, was that he was humble enough to understand what he didn't know. And I was going to be a first-time CRO, so it wasn't like I had all the answers either. But like, I think we kind of came to this place where he trusted that I wouldn't drive him off a cliff immediately, and that he would give me a little bit of rope to go figure out a couple things and that we could build something. So I think that's the thing. I've met lots that kind of think they want it until they dig in and understand frankly, what that costs and what the strategic decision means, because it means a lot to the growth of the company.
Is the control more about the cost, which obviously every early stage company is very, very focused on, or is it how their baby is being sold?
I don't know. Eran could probably speak better to it than me.
I don't think it's
I've
the
never
cost.
been it. It's
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah, I don't think it's the cost. I mean, it's always a consideration, but I don't think it's the cost. The point is that you're letting go of something that you know the most about, and it's not natural. And by the way, and here comes somebody, if you pick them properly, who will look at it from almost a completely different angle, right? About a process that needs to take place in some other organization and how you control it or want to control it or need to control it. These are things that in general, product people or founders that are product people, and they know nothing about. And sometimes they are not there to admit it. that is the case, and that's a big it's a big issue. By the way, I meet those people all the time here in Israel. I have to say, like all the time.
Yeah, I mean, most founders are.
And I tell them, all right, let's look at this. Let's look at. They don't understand why. They say yes, yes, but they don't do that. That's why I always said that the medic has to have the letter H in it for hope, right? Because that's what they take off first. That's it. That's
So,
the reality.
Ron, when you were going out looking for Keith before meeting Keith, what was the profile?
So here's the thing. I didn't really know what the profile was, but I did have some kind of guidance. And here's the thing. I used to work for a company called Technomatics that was dealing with CAD/CAM and 3D simulations of production lines and so on. And during my tenure at Technomatics, another company rose in an adjacent market, which was called PTC. And PTC, besides having a really interesting and great product, they had the most aggressive sales organization probably the world has ever seen until that point, something like that. And they kind of took over the whole CAD/CAM market, or most of it, or a lot of it, or something that became they made a big impact very, very quickly. And when I spoke with the board, I said, I don't know exactly what that is, but I would really like to find somebody from that organization. By the way, Technomatics has nothing to do with Perfecto, right? It's not even relevant. But that resonated with me. And I remember they were in Boston. I actually spent several meetings at PTC in Boston. So that is something that I was looking for. And one of our investors said, I know a guy who used to be at that organization, Andy Byron.
Yeah.
And he worked at the Avexa, I think it was, right? He was VP sales at Avexa, and he said, "Why don't you talk to him?" And I spoke with Andy, and he wasn't available at the time.
Yeah. I work with Andy at Cyberside later on.
Yeah, I know. And he said, you should you should look at other people from this, from my organization. And he pointed at Keith, basically. And so that is how I got to meet Keith. But Andy did also say one more thing, which was very interesting, and I kind of take with me for other management interactions as well. I asked him, as VP of sales, you get up in the morning, what is it that you do? Like, what do you do? And he said, I coach and I hire, right? Now, that's not only for sales, if you think about it, it's for everything. But for me, for people, a sales organization has a big turnaround and so on, this is really, really important. And so in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I need to probably look for that as well. So I learned that during the interview process. But that landed me with
Very cool, very cool. And Keith, when you hire a leader, you know, a senior leader in the organization, like what's the profile you're looking for?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a universal truth. Like you when you're scaling a company, hiring the right people is probably job number 1, 2, and 3. And so someone who can hire at scale and hire great people. I'm sure you've heard the cliche, you know, A's can hire A's, but B's can hire only B's and C's, and C's probably don't hire. So, you know, if you get that wrong, you can change the whole dynamic of the organization. So I'd say that's primary one. My big, you know, my big thing these days is teaching. So as Andy said, development, teaching, like, you know, you get a lot more mileage out of teaching than you do from doing. So I'd say that's right up there.
Yeah, and I
developing
would say that's,
people.
yeah, completely. And I would say that's one of the things that you brought into Perfecto big time. You know, the focus on coaching, both in the day-to-day, but also in the, you know, in the get-togethers and the QBRs and the sales kickoffs, the amount of coaching that went in the organization went up. I think not only in sales, I think it brought in a DNA of coaching, which was
yes, definitely.
Right.
Yeah,
that's true.
So let's open the kimono. When you came into Perfecto, I was there, I think, for a quarter and a half, 2 quarters. I came just before you. So my view on Perfecto was still fresh as well. But what did you see when you came in? And imagine Eran is not here.
Oh, so don't worry about it. Don't worry. I know exactly what was there.
Yeah, well, Ron and I I don't think there's anything I could say that would be surprising to Ron at this point. We've had very open discussions over the years about this stuff. Nothing surprising. I was crazy excited. I mean, I was crazy excited for a couple of reasons. One, I was taking on my first VP sales job, and so I was dialed in and fully focused and excited. The product seemed amazing, and you know, there was some growth there, some things to work with. We had some customers and some big customers that we could leverage. So I was super pumped. I loved the team and everything. It was a great, huge opportunity. I moved my family down to Boston from Toronto. I remember I finished a half Ironman in somewhere in New Hampshire the day before, and I came into the office. I could barely walk on my first day of work. The things we do. Anyway, but I'd say, like, you know, what did we find? Well, a lot of good, and then kind of a lot of selling that didn't really fit in a small company. So you know, in small companies, the things that, you know, you'd think salespeople do don't always fit, like a lot of relationship driven. Nobody knows your brand, so you got to do what we call pipeline generation like crazy. You have to sellers actually have to do outreach and create their own pipeline. And then, you know, your resources are finite, so you can't just go do POCs all over the place. One metric that stuck out to me, which is very, very common, as I've learned over the years, is when you go into these environments, tend to do a lot of POCs and get very few deals out of them. And I remember our leader, Asaf, on the technical team, my first one-on-one with him, he said, we did 120 some odd POCs and we closed like 13 deals. And I was like, okay, there we go. So these are the things that make it very hard to build and scale and get predictability around when you're converting that type of, and you think of the salespeople and the SEs, no one's making any money if they got to do 5-6 POCs to do one deal. And so, like, there's just some fundamental things like, okay, let's do a lot more PG, meaning let's do a lot more outreach. Let's kind of clean up how we're qualifying, and let's start to kind of hire some people that can run this program. And I'd say those are, and off the top of my head, those are kind of the 3 big things. And frankly, you see them pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
Keith, but I think you also did something that I thought was a good thing. You came in to a small sales organization that had, I think, 5 salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, if you think about it, so in many cases, somebody like you comes in, like, you fire everybody. You just get rid of everybody. You did not do that. You did you did suspect they may not fit the profile you would hire. That's fine. But you did, I don't want to say give them a chance, but you did try to qualify, how they would fit. And I thought that was really good. And some actually lasted for a while because I can't say they were a perfect fit, but they were good material to work with. Will and skill and all those, criteria and stuff. And for me to look at that, while everybody's saying if you bring in somebody, everybody else will go away, run away, that did not happen. And I think that's a good transition, regardless of how, quote unquote, bad the situation was before, right?
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad before. It just was different. Yeah, it was just different in that they wanted, they came to a small company to do their thing. And their thing was kind of like, well, I would just call it lone wolfing in a way, where they kind of go out in their territory and they kind of do their thing. And they're very good salespeople. They had, a lot of them were selling and had good track records. And then here comes this machine that kind of like, that wants to change the way they do things. And it's like, okay, the first question they ask is this guy serious? And then the second question is I want them to ask themselves is, can I fit into this thing? And is there anything for me here? Or is this just not the place for me? And so that was, I like to believe that people are good and want to work and want to be successful. And so like the question is really, is it a fit? And so I wanted to give them some time to do that as we kind of built out some of the rest of it. And I give you kudos to kind of watch that kind of sausage making happen and not to panic, because it can get messy, unfortunately, and
Yes.
It did.
Yeah, so let's talk about.
I think it was also at the end of the day, right? We're people, so it was also exciting because what I saw was somebody come in and putting a process in place and trying to make it as scientific as this can be, and getting more people on board, which is it's exciting. It's like it's taking something to a completely different level. So it wasn't really hard to want to happen.
I think Keith's mention, your mention of the machine is key, because I remember watching the change, and it wasn't just you coming in. It's exactly the point of view of how do we build the machine, the go-to-market machine around what's been built here. And in the first few discussions you and I had, your questions were, today I can map them exactly to like what you need in order to run that machine, which is, what are the differentiators? Why are we winning? What are the problems we're actually solving? How do we quantify those problems? Like, those were the initial things you tried to dig into because in order to build that machine. And so let's talk about that transformation for a second. So maybe from each of you, from different points of view, what was the transformation that the company went through?
All right, I'll start because you'll be able to dig in more. But so I look at it from like three big elements I'm thinking, right? The first one is process, right? We have this qualification mechanism. Let's put a process in place. Let's put in place some leading indicators. How advanced are you in the sales cycle and so on? When are you allowed to commit? All these things suddenly took shape in the form of actual rules of how to operate, right? And I thought that was a very big element here. The second one is the hiring. I was in my mind, we made mistakes and so on, but in my mind, it was amazing to see a hiring machine that is focused on, bringing in people who could probably make an impact, and we knew why we are bringing them in order to make an impact. So that's another element, and maybe the biggest one that I saw, which for me was the biggest change in the company, was a cultural impact, right? I think, and again, not all of us may think about it the same way, but for me, everybody in the company was in sales. Everybody in the company was thinking about sales, the programmers here in Israel were thinking, why am I doing this? Is it helping anybody? Right? I'm not just doing it because it's interesting. I'm doing it because it's supposed to help people. And I saw that in all departments of the company, not only in sales. And I think that was it was a huge impact on everybody, right? And I think you felt it too, right, Roy? I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very clear. So
Yeah,
yeah, these are
completely. I'll give my view, but I want to hear, Keith, how do you describe the transformation? Let's say the first, quarter or two.
Yeah. Those are all, I'd say those are all good ones. Recruiting and putting the development place. I'd say, brought in, people like Chris Healy and brought in Rob Watson and the kind of like everything that kind of happened underneath those folks was amazing. So that's foundational for sure. I think like three things I kind of figured, let's just clean up some of the big gates in the process so that we can kind of like from a lean manufacturing or a DevOps process, like just like stop the rework and all of the stuff that's not really contributing to actually closing deals. That's kind of one of the things that a good sales process does. So, let's take that conversion rate from 15% to 85 and 90%, meaning we work on deals that we can close. That's kind of a fundamental transformation in thinking, because you're saying
But
no to
let me
a lot.
interject, Keith. How do you get a team that's used to jump into a POC the minute they can, qualify that, and push it to an 85% 90% conversion from a POC?
Yeah. One thing I learned is actually you do it through the SE organization. You do it through the technical folks, because what they really hate doing is working on things that are a waste of time, from a demo to a POC to all kinds of stuff. And so you can basically use that angst to kind of fix the thing, right? They get medic very quickly if they don't already understand it implicitly, because it's much more scientific than the art of building a relationship with someone and trying to see if they'll buy from someone who likes them, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I start there. I'm not sure that's the only way, but that's how I do it. And then once you get a few wins, it makes so much sense. And the leadership and reinforces things within 6 months. You can completely transform the pipeline. So I'd say does that make sense, Ray? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically,
and you also clean up people who don't, at the end of the day, don't align. I mean,
but
That
it's
is true.
leveraging you're making them feel more valuable by qualifying what they're doing better, I think.
Yeah. And I'd say then that, like, once that's the big stuff, I'd say the next layer is just like, okay, now let's turn the message into an Amway pitch in a way, right? I don't know if you ever took an Amway pitch, but like the thing, I had some friends who did it, and I remember going and listening to them talk. And the one thing I took away from it, and I used to reflect on it, was how repeatable the message was, that you could have kind of just regular folks, not salespeople, kind of pitch this thing in a very understandable way. And so, like, making it really repeatable and trying to figure out, as you said, Roy, like you and I, you were a great partner in that, is to flush out what's really different, what's the real value prop, how do we how do we draw that out, how do we make it less complicated? And once you have like the right people and the right process, and then you layer in kind of this simplified, beautiful framework of language and messaging on top, I'd say now you have the pillars to scale.
Excellent. So here's my analogy to what I think this transformation was looking like. Before tech, as you guys know, I used to coach judo. First third of my life, basically. It used to be first half of my life. Now it's first third of my life.
It's not good.
Used to be all your life, I think.
Stop that. Stop that.
And the difference between two guys that are just wrestling without any knowledge versus taking somebody looking at a judo match is in a way very similar to trying to sell the best way you can versus selling with a framework and a methodology that you have, which is, it's very logical. You lead somebody to where they need to be, right? You get them at the state they need to be at, right at the balance point where they need to be. And then there's almost nothing to be done, right? You've already won before anything is actually happening. And somebody who understands judo pretty well, when they look at a match, they know that, you know, the ippon, which is the sort of the winning point, is coming a few moments before it's actually coming, because they see everything going towards that, and there's no other option but making it happen in most times.
Okay.
In a way, that's what the value framework and MEDDIC and the methodology was bringing to the sales process, right? Once you get on the same page with a customer on why they need to change, why is it so strategic for them to change? How much does it cost them not to change? What are the critical things they need in order to change? There's no more selling that needs to be done, right? And even before the decision is made, a quote is given, right? They're already there. And in a way, I constantly look at this, and I was calling it like, it's in a way, it's like sales judo for me, right? It's, you get them at the state where there's no other way but making the decision that needs to be made. And so for me, that was the aha moment when I saw the transformation. I don't think I ever told you that, but it was the aha moment when I saw the transformation, and it clicked, because that's something that can always work. That's a repeatable machine that you can build, right? And I think that's what happened to Perfecto, and what happens to an organization that goes through these transformations. And then I think what also happened, which you touched on, Eran, is, and that goes both to you, Keith, and also to you, Eran, as the CEO, because we put so much effort and focus on it, the rest of the organization really subscribed. So it wasn't a sales transformation. It wasn't even a go-to-market transformation. It was a company transformation. And I always give the example, the differentiators names that we chose became names of R&D teams. Like, they took pride in being the team that creates this differentiator that was so significant for winning. It became the name of their R&D team. Right? So the transformation went really all the way back.
It's not only pride, I mean, it became an easier communication tool, right? I mean, when you speak about the same things, then it's pretty clear, right?
Right. All right, so let's do some war stories. So maybe let's talk about some deals and some examples where, you know, going through this transformation from your point, Eran, a deal that maybe you know, was in one way, and then you saw another deal in you know, post the transformation.
I always give this example, really. I mean, when I talk to people about, you know, getting their sales organization intact and building a process, I always give this example. When Keith joined, one of the existing sales guys there had a deal he worked on with Costco. It wasn't the largest deal we would be making, but it wasn't small. But you know, it's Costco, right? It's a big brand. And this guy wasn't following any methodology whatsoever, right? He was going by his gut. And when Keith asked, okay, so what will you commit? I think it was for the third quarter, maybe it was for the fourth. I'm not sure. And he said, yeah, I'm going to close this right now. It's like, it's done. It's like the contract and legal and whatever. And Keith said, okay, so Keith, you know, he doesn't know any better, right? What's your MEDDIC? Let's see. Did you speak with the EB? He said, no, yeah, this guy is the champion. He said, it's okay, no worries, it's fine, it's going to happen. It's happening. Keith said, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Yeah, you don't know, you're not there. And sure enough, the deal did not happen. That was the end of Q3. During the quarter, this guy continued to work Costco because the deal wasn't happening, and Keith was continuously telling him, you know, it's you know, you got to get the EB, otherwise it's not gonna close. Sure enough, come December, what are you gonna close? Is Costco gonna close this year? Yeah, no problem. Keith said, did you meet with the EB? Nope, not gonna close. Sure enough, did not close. Come January, Keith, I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think Keith kind of threatened him that if we don't talk to the EB, the deal is not going to happen, and he's not going to happen either, right? They spoke with the EB, they closed it that month, right? They closed it that month. So the guy did good work. It's not like he was out of touch, but he just wasn't following that, ticking of the qualification criteria and in order to actually close the deal. To me, it was like an eye-opener.
Very cool. What about you, Keith? One of the first deals at Perfecto that really blew you away or sort of showed you that either transformation happened or it is happening?
Well, I don't think it was one of the first ones. It's been a while. I was trying to think about this as Eran was also speaking, but the one that always sticks out to me was, Andrew Ziverts and Sam Costello. They did that not only that deal, but built that relationship with Allstate. And I was always so proud of those guys for that. Not only they build amazing relationships, but they really did a very nice job of kind of connecting our value prop to their business and the business outcomes, to the fact that getting to the economic buyer was quite easy. We happened all the time. Even before we did the deal, the business case was just lights out. We had great champions across the organization. They were like kind of leaning into us so strong that the deals were actually quarter by quarter, actually very easy to predict. I kind of knew at that point I'd kind of worked myself out of a job. In fact, like, these guys don't need me. They got it. And it was a super proud moment for me. And I was super proud. I also started to realize, oh my gosh, these guys have sold too much technology. Like, I don't know how we're ever going to go and implement all this stuff that these guys trust us to do. But maybe that's the next topic. But anyway, I say that was it. When the guys, they just do it because it's not a requirement. They do it because they know it helps, because they know it's the right thing to do. And at that point, you can stop yelling and screaming. And you get total buy-in, but that took a couple of years, frankly. That was a couple of years in, at least.
Yeah, but I think that the process that was in place actually helped grow some existing customers in ways that none of us really imagined would happen, right? I mean, just think about even taking the guy who was working on Verizon, who wasn't, it was like a kind of a lone wolf type guy, but still, you guys managed to make him, at least, try to adhere to some of this stuff in order to advance, and he did really well. And I think he wouldn't have done that well alone. It would never happen, never. So that's very evident.
That was actually a big metric, right, Eran? Growing existing customers at Perfecto worked really well. We had a nice chart showing whatever. I don't remember the exact metrics, but doing the upsells was a big part of the revenue.
Yeah, and in relatively large numbers too. So it wasn't like growing from 10K to 40K. It was growing from 400K to 2 million or stuff like that. So yeah.
Very cool. So actually, go ahead, Keith.
I was just going to say, we got to start talking about the things that we didn't do well, because I don't usually spend this much time on the good stuff.
That's my next question, Keith, actually. And we're talking about the upsells, which might be one of the things that we would do different. So, let's talk about that. So, at Perfecto, and I think you and I spoke about that a little bit, we were very focused on sales, and then sort of post sales was a different world. So how do we look at this, today?
Yeah. Well, this is where I spend most of my time thinking about what what would I do differently, and how do I take the things I did wrong maybe and apply them today. I'd say a couple things. First of all, like, for myself, right? Like, I was a young, pretty aggressive guy. I thought I could sell my way out of everything, and I thought we could sell our way to $1 billion company. And so, like, my general attitude was typically get out of my way and let me sell, kind of thing. And one thing, and so for my own personal growth, I realized that you can't really do anything really big by yourself. And so I think it was Rainer said to me one time, that was I think we brought him in as the president in the later days. he pulled me aside and asked me, I think he said to me something like, how come you react so emotionally to every piece of information? And I was like, oh, I guess I do. I didn't even know what that meant. It took me a long time to kind of unpack what he meant there. And I think what he meant was like, why don't you just slow down and think like an executive for a while instead of a reactionary sales guy, if that makes sense. So that's one thing, like to become an executive and to change how I look at this thing, instead of looking at it as just a sales organization driving the tip of the spear, look at it like an entire company and a strategy. How do we do things together? And I think that would probably lead to the thing that I would say I didn't do a great job of. Eran mentioned it before, but like to realize that the product is so important, and keeping up with the very fast changing market by kind of integrating product more and more and more into the customer and what the requirements were, and kind of working together versus kind of working apart. I think would have made a big difference. Now, I don't know, Eran, you'd probably say we had some pretty heavy market headwinds that in change that happened there that maybe we couldn't have done a ton about. But at the same time, I think that would have made a massive difference to
No, I agree. I agree with you. I agree. And headwinds, that would be an excuse, right? I mean, it's not really. I think
You guys, go ahead, Eran. Go ahead.
I agree. I agree with you. I think that in general, it's not only with the post-sales activities. To me, it's also with the marketing, like the pre sales activity, the marketing funnel, and how did we go about making sure that the market knows about us and wants us and so on, so that we make the sales process more streamlined and easier, and implementation and so on. I think, like, I'm going to say something terrible, right? I think our marketing wasn't good, not in terms of the work that was done, because people did work, and we had hundreds of people attending webinars, right? There were leads and stuff.
amazing, actually, the amount of
Yeah, everybody did a lot of good work, but in terms of connecting marketing and sales and maybe the post-sale activity, the customer success related stuff, we were not doing that. And I think it hurt us on the upsell stuff, and I think it also hurt us on the pre-sale, like the number of opportunities we really got going. I think that's kind of
I'll give you a good example on that one, Eran. I'll give you a good example there is like sales is always focused on having qualified deals in the pipeline. That's our goal. It's to build a forecast full of qualified deals. Marketing's goal was to deliver a number of qualified MQLs, marketing qualified leads, regardless of the outcome in a way. So the goals were so misaligned, and I couldn't unite them. And so if I could have done that better, we would have had a better outcome, because there's so much wasted energy in that. You have marketing saying these are great leads, your sales guys suck, and sales guys saying the leads are crap and marketing sucks, and you spend so much energy in that turmoil, which frankly is all just completely wasted energy. I mean, we all want the same thing at the end of the day, so what the hell are we doing?
I agree, and I think that it wasn't your job to do it. It was actually mine, and I should have addressed it in one of two ways. One, the obvious way is for me to try to align it, to be more proactive about aligning this stuff. But the second one, which is something that the industry realized as we progressed, and I probably should have done before that, as an organizational change that would have made a CRO, would have put in place a CRO function that is also responsible for the marketing activity of the company, and that would create like a more streamlined process. I would do that. Like, I know to do that again.
How do you guys look at post sales today different than what we did back then? I mean, at the last year or two at Perfecto, post sales or the renewal was bigger than the new number, right? So it's a big number.
Oh, it's a big number, of course.
To renew and upsell, which is for every company beyond a certain stage. So how do you look at it differently today?
Yeah, I'll take it first, Eran, and then again, I think again, we were kind of in no man's land there a little bit. Like we did good work, and the people really worked hard trying to, in the post-sales organization, trying to make them successful. I think again, one thing that I learned is again, we have the same goal, making customers successful and having them upsell are kind of one in the same thing. And when I say we're in no man's land, it's like you either have highly technical people that can get in the account, like an SC can, and actually drive the technical outcomes, or you have very, very salesy people that can kind of like build the relationship and help. And somewhere in the middle is where we built the organization there, which did some good stuff, but they weren't technical enough to really do the work. And they weren't salesy enough to actually do the transactions. And so there was just a lot, again, I believe, wasted energy in trying to figure out how to communicate a lot internally. And I don't think we delivered a great experience as a result to the customer. I think we could have aligned that better and made a decision on kind of like, okay, what do we want this to be? Do we want it to be a highly technical organization that can go into the client, or we feel like the technology can do itself and we need to go and kind of figure out how to drive executive relationship better? I think we kind of fell in the middle, and that's where we're at. But we had amazing, I'd love to know our NRR. I can't even remember what it was, our net retention rate, but we did very well for quite some time there. And we had some really great upsells.
Yeah, we like the NRR measured not conservatively like I used to do, which I couldn't care less about, dollars compensating for dollars that were lost and stuff like that. But the way the industry calculates it, it was like 115 or 100, stuff like that. So it was a good it was a good number. I agree with that as well. I think that there needs to be, first of all, there needs to be an understanding in my mind in the sales organization that existing customers are assets that they can actually tap into in order to get more dollars, more new dollars. That's one thing. And that's a challenge. Many times it's a challenge in itself, right? And then there's the other side, which is how do we make sure that the customer is really benefiting from the product. And my gut feeling tells me it's an organizational solution where you somehow build an account team. Maybe it's partial people doing partial accounts and stuff like that, but you build an account team that is actually responsible for making this account successful. And Keith, some of these accounts were countries, right? I mean, Ford it's like a country, right? You want to have a customer like Ford. So that's in my mind that I think we kind of missed out on, because organizationally we were not resolving that. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
Last question, guys, on some of the lessons learned. What about channel? What are we doing? How are you guys looking at channel today different than what we did at Perfecto? That's one of the things that we didn't really leverage all the way at Perfecto to the point that we got, and I'm interested to understand that as well.
I want to say something about that. It's very interesting. The channel was very impactful at the end of the day, not necessarily because they closed deals for us, but they were there. And because we kind of, it wasn't perfect and it's like a mess, right? But in general, because we kept good relationships and we did know who these people are, they actually did a lot of work for us, which in the beginning we would not be willing to admit. But they were there. I remember David, our chairman, talking with the guy from Accenture and telling him, how come you're not selling more of our product? And he said, who said we're not selling? Sometimes you take it on your paper, sometimes we take it on our paper, but we sell a lot of Perfecto. That was his notion. And I don't know how much exactly they were really impacting, but my gut feeling is there was almost always a partner with the big customers. There was almost always a partner involved. And I can tell you even more than that. When I speak about Sidetalk and what I want to do, I am not disqualifying partners. And in my mind, I think we did better with partners than most companies, actually, to be honest. I don't know, Keith, your take on it, but
yeah, I think, like you said, it was a bit of a mess, and we got to a pretty good place. Although I don't know, in my head, I was never sure, what we were really doing there, but we kind of kept going because we knew we should, but we weren't really sure what we were doing. And I think that's the thing that my mind is clear on today. Is like, on one hand, when you're really early and you're building, Roy, you're building frameworks, you're building messaging, you're trying to figure out how to sell the thing that's very small and very early. Doing it with partners, unless it's the core strategy of the go-to-market, is very, very difficult. How can you ask someone to sell your product you can't even sell yourself? Okay. Who has 10 other products in the bag? So that's kind of core. I always believe that's true. However, on the other side, like, I also believe partnerships need to be treated like a first-class citizen in the go-to-market organization, not this kind of ugly stepchild that kind of like picks up the scraps and is very contradicted. Go do work, and then we're going to tear down the work you did by taking a deal direct. All of this kind of craziness that happens. So I think partners are a long-term strategy. I don't believe we actually got to the point at Perfecto where we got to take advantage of that work. It would have happened in the post $150 million stage of our company. Like, for example, here at Observe, we all know Rob Watson. He's been a CRO. He was instrumental in the work we did at Perfecto. He actually runs all partnerships at Observe as an executive here, and has a seat at the table and driving a very important part of our business with zero revenue. Okay. But obviously that's not the goal, but it's because, there's so much value there, as Eran says. But it doesn't happen quickly. You got to make that investment and be real about when the revenue is really going to come. But if you don't make it, you're never going to get it.
That's a good that's a good take on it.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, guys, first of all, this has been fun. I have to, I think I told each of you individually, what I do today at Spotlight is a lot because of you guys. So I always remember.
Oddly enough, it's also about the Sidetalk.
Yeah, so a lot of things came out of Perfecto, and I never forget that, and I still consult with you guys as well. So I look for you for advice always. So first of all, thanks, guys. It's been a lot of fun, and until next time.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for putting that together. Appreciate it. See you guys.
Bye.